Evening all.
Well, hey there, young lady.
Hi, Michael.
How are you?
I'm very good.
Awesome.
Good evening. Hi, all.
So I'll just quickly go through the slides while we wait for others to join as well, and then at least that's done. So these sessions are all recorded and shared publicly to support others in these teachings. And I'm Yinka, and I run Hear My Voice Book Club, which is an inspirational self-development books. And what we've got left this week is the 5 AM club tomorrow, no sessions, 10th, 11th and 12th. I did my in-person book club today with Waterstones, and the next one's going to be Your Future Self now in March. We've got Jodie Spencer's book club on the 15th of February, and Michael Rice, who comes and joins us on the 2nd and 4th Thursday of each month.
Each month?
Each month.
Yes, each month. Every month.
Every month.
On and on we go.
Yay. Our March online monthly book club is The Power of One More, and that's Thursday the 7th of March. And we do have WhatsApp groups keeping people connected. And Hear My Voice Book Club runs non-profit events so everyone can take part regardless of financial status. Any donations will go to support Michael in these teachings. So if anybody at the end of the session feels like donating, actually to send it directly to Michael's on his website. And we're just going to do some shoulder rolls and loosen up ourselves, ready for Michael. Wake ourselves up if you've had a busy day. So nice deep breaths in, draw up the shoulders all the way to the ears. And exhale. Nice deep breath in, draw up the shoulders. As you exhale, bring the shoulders back and down. One more time, nice deep breath in. And exhale. And if you're willing and able, just to stand up, give your bodies a good shake out. Get it moving. Get that energy circulating. I'm sure Michael will get it circulating shortly for you.
On some level.
Yeah. You ready? You can take a seat. So Michael Rice is the founder and director of Heartland Self-Healing Center. Michael lectures and teaches on health, healing, and true meaning of true forgiveness. Michael is married to Jeannie Rice, and if you were here last session, I highly recommend you watch the recording because Jeannie came and took one of the sessions as well. So
That was a fun session, wasn't it?
Yes, it was lovely having you both on as well. So would you like to share anything before we go through the slides?
Well, if anyone's moving in higher and higher directions and you'd like to be part of the radio show, we've started a new study. I think we're in our 13th day, and Jeannie has set up a page on the website where you can go back to the archives for the study of the Enlightenment book, which is what we've published so far from the Cabourse manuscript. Because of the foreign countries not being able to call to the US, it's been kind of difficult for some people to get into the show. So we're experimenting with a program called Podbeam. And so if you download on your phone I'm not sure whether it goes on computers or not, an app called Podbeam. You can tap into the show, and it's Mind Shifters Radio. You can subscribe to it and then listen, watch. You don't have to use cell minutes. We're not at the point where we figured out how you can call in yet, because we're still doing the blog talk portion of it. So, but we're working on that, and we'll see how it all develops. But you can be part of the show just by downloading Podbeam, and it's free. And when we get it, when we get to the point where we can utilize it more fully, then you won't have to call into the show. You'll just be able to hit a button on Podbeam and we'll be having a conversation. Right now, that piece is not possible, but the rest of it is. So hope you'll join us 5 days a week, 1 till 2 o'clock Eastern time. We've got an ongoing conversation, or you can go to whyagain.org/enlightenment-study. And that has all of the links to the videos or the audio tracks on YouTube. So you can catch up with that study. And we've been hitting some pretty good stuff. You were on today, Yenko. I thought that went really well. And were you on yesterday's show?
I was on some of it. My internet went off, so I was only on, I think, the first part of it.
Well, yesterday and today together make a really nice package if anybody wants to get another level and another look at where it is we're going with these tools.
Mm-hmm. So remember, throughout this session, holding your breath is exactly how you acquire a past about something and carry it with you. Holding your breath attaches the pain of an experience to a reality in your mind. So throughout the session, triggers may come up. Michael may set off some triggers.
Me? No.
So remember to breathe. Well, he may only reflect what's going on inside of you.
Well, remember, the purpose of life, as long as you're holding on to and hiding something from yourself, is to kick you in the limitation. And I'm here only to be truly helpful. So let's go for it. Here's what I do know. You won't confront anything you didn't bring in with you.
Mm-hmm. So in the previous chapters, Richard, a successful man in his late 30s, following breakup of another marriage, had contacted Michael. Richard felt his life was a mess and was desperate and wanted Michael's help. In the previous chapter 13, Off the Mark, we looked at holding a place of love for ourselves as we delved into what we had been taught about sin and how it impacted us, taking a look at its true original meaning, off the mark. So years of study and intellectual knowledge about doctrines or religions does not necessarily mean one has an actual spiritual experience. Translation of the Aramaic teachings are so distorted today. The translation appears sound, but are twisted just enough to cover up the wisdom that was available through the original words. It makes you wonder if it has been done purposely.
For sure. And yeah, it definitely is something to look at and recognize that the secrets are not hidden in the mind, they're hidden by the mind. And that's why the core tool out of the first century Aramaic language is forgiveness, which collapses the mind and moves it out of the way. And when it's moved out of the way, there's this clean and open space within us where we can have a direct experience. And then, of course, when you have that direct experience, the mind will try and grab it and make it, you'll own it, make it its own. And the real experience of being human, of the magnificence of our human lives, is huge. And it won't fit in the mind. You know, it's like trying to put an 8-foot 2x4 in the 8 inches between your ears. It just doesn't fit. And so the explanations become feeble. And those who have not resolved their own hostility or fear will tend to utilize that hostility or fear to entrap others in whatever their game is. And what we're looking to do is to support people in getting free of the game, whatever the game is.
Mm-hmm. So there are people who have studied Greek interpretations, often called translations of Aramaic teachings, yet have no interest in the actual meaning of what they have studied. Without success to the original intended meaning, which can only be understood through a comprehensive of the conceptual framework of the Aramaic mind, it is difficult for people to apply the tools that were originally taught. Sound teachings have gone from being practical and down-to-earth tools to being impractical and unattainable. As a result, people miss out on the knowledge, understanding, healing benefits, and comfort provided by the original teachings.
Yeah, if you go to the original Aramaic language, you don't find all this fear and manipulation, this intense condemnation that happens. What you find is here's how your mind works. Here's how you get it out of the way. Here's how you tap into a direct experience of who you are and live as a human being. And a human being, if you've ever held a newborn and you tap into the essence of the newborn, it becomes clear very quickly that the essence of human life is love. And that's where we want to take people, is into that experience and then offer the tools with which to remove everything else, everything that does not support you living as a true human being. And the tool for doing that was called forgiveness in Aramaic.
So why would the teachings be distorted, Michael? Richard inquired. There are the three possibilities I see, says Michael. One of that, the expression of the ideas could have been limited by the ability of the language into which they were translated. Recall the two-dimensional creatures we talked about earlier had no word to express the truth about the three-dimensional world. A language can only express understanding for which it has words.
And the mind can only understand the meaning behind those words if it has the brain cells for those words. Let's imagine we go into an electronics shop and there's a table with a something on it, and it's got glass tubes and it's got wires and it's got an antenna and it's got a screen, and somebody looks at it and goes, well, looks like glass and wires and a screen. I don't know what it is. No brain cells. I mean, they speak the same language as the person who's a physician and walks in and goes, oh, there's an EEG machine. The person who doesn't have the brain cells for what an EEG machine is describes it as something, well, it is, it's wires, it's glass, it's tubes, but that doesn't say anything about what it actually is. And without the brain cells for, and to have the brain cells for the actuality of the experience, you have to have had the experience. And so what we're looking to do, again, is to support people in having a personal experience, personally experienced, not hearing about it somebody else's wonderful personal experience, but having your own and building the brain cells for what that means and what can be done with it.
So a second possibility is the level of understanding of a translators who had little or no actual experience with the transforming power of the teachings. Without realizing it, they watered down the powerful ancient wisdom to their limited capacity. Can you possibly translate something beyond your level of comprehension?
And obviously you can't. Cute graphic, watering it down.
Yes.
Now, was it your idea to put those two objects together, Yinka?
No, I actually found it like that, so I was quite.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So perfect, because I just typed in what I wanted and it showed up.
Cool.
Amazing.
It is.
I'm not sure what you are saying, Michael, Richard asked with confusion. Let's use an example. Would you want to go to a chemistry lab and perform a complex and dangerous experiment on the instructions of a first-year chemistry student who doesn't even know the language of a higher chemistry? Of course not. I would want a competent, experienced instructor who knows. I would at least want the input of someone who had actually performed the experiment and had it work, replied Richard. Who has been your spiritual teacher, consciously or unconsciously? That's meant to say unconsciously, growing up. Were they competent, experienced in their teachings? So who was your spiritual teachers, consciously or unconsciously growing up? And were they experienced in their teachings? And you can
So
put
if you think about, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say they can put it in the chat or raise their hands if they want to share.
Yeah. So we hear people talking about wonderful experiences, but they live a life of misery. And if they're talking about wonderful experiences, but living a life of misery, that's probably not the person you want to follow. You know, if you want to go to a financial advisor, you probably don't want to go to the homeless shelter. Though that person may have had lots of experience with money, he's ended up somewhere you really probably don't want to end up. And so what's the competence level of the person that one is listening to? And sadly, if people have terrorism in their minds and they decide to move into the spiritual field, then, you know, it's like they become terrorists for God, which is pretty, you know, it's an oxymoron. It's crazy, but that unfortunately is what happens.
And sometimes it's the small things that we've been taught and unaware that that's what we've been taught that can do the most, well, hold us back in life the most.
Exactly. Yes.
Does anyone want to share who theirs were? And if they were competent and experienced teachers?
I've been invited to a kind of a fundamentalist type church. This was a few years ago. And a couple of rows, it's not a place I would normally go, but a couple of rows in front of me, there was this young kid, it was maybe 12 or 13. And it was interesting to just watch him. I mean, this preacher's up there and he's doing hellfire and brimstone. This little kid is like, you can just see the terror in him. He's being terrorized from a pulpit. It's like, what kind of sanity goes hand in hand with that type of thinking? But unfortunately, it's pretty widespread. And of course, it's all a call for healing.
Because I was taught by my parents of what a relationship looks like, but it wasn't very healthy at all type of relationship. But it's not until I've got as an adult to realize I've been living unconsciously to that and reacting it out within my own life.
Mm.
But then when
Yeah,
I
that
look,
power person dynamic's a big deal.
we do put them on such high authority, and then it is that question: are they competent to teach that?
Yep.
Unfortunately, often they're not. So who is your teachers on your spiritual journey now, consciously or unconsciously? Are they competent, experienced in their teachings? So who have you chosen now on your journey as teachers? And have you even thought about who your teacher is?
And as you do that, breathe as you think about those issues. Allow your breath to move.
I was thinking about this today because even what we watch on TV, they become our teachers, even if that's unconsciously. If we start watching TV all day, that becomes our teachers of that journey, of our journey.
Exactly. The modeling for all kinds of craziness comes from that boob tube. An exercise I often assign to people is take a notebook, regular piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, and draw a 1-inch margin down one side of the page, and sit in front of the television set and spend no more than 3 minutes on any station. And you want to flip from station to station, max of 3 minutes on any station. And every time that you hear a word that actually represents human life, that actually represents the expression of love, put a check mark in the 1-inch column. Every time you hear a word based in hostility or fear, put a check mark on the right-hand side of the page. You'll fill pages with the check marks on the right side of the page before you'll ever fill one column with words that actually represent human life, actually represent the presence of love in the world. Might not be the best teacher. But you know, it's interesting, a few years ago here in America, FCC, Federal Communications Commission, decided that they were going to switch all broadcasting from analog to digital, a different form of processing a signal. And anybody who had an old analog TV couldn't watch TV anymore. The government set up a program where if you didn't buy a new TV, they would pay for a converter box so you'd still be able to be brainwashed by the TV. Interesting. It's a very powerful tool. And a lot of people sit in front of it and just suck it up, never knowing that it's all energy, and they're taking on those energies of who knows what kind of crazy.
Would it be wise to demand the same from the person you choose to assist you in a spiritual process? Would it be equally wise to qualify the person who helps you reach a conclusion about whether such things as the spiritual dimensions even exist? Many have never thought of consciously choosing their spiritual leaders or considered what the appropriate criteria are for making that choice.
Yeah, oftentimes people are, well, of the thousands, tens of thousands actually of different denominations in basically any religion, which at least theoretically represents a spiritual dimension, that they just happen to have been born into the right one that had all the right answers. And it might be wisdom to be able to broaden one's horizons and look a little deeper into what's it really about, what's really going on here.
So have you ever asked yourself what qualifies someone to give you advice? Because we often listen to other people's voices as our advisors who are screaming out their own pain, which tends to render them unconscious. Many of us tend to listen to those voices, and in succeeding years, when the words of the unqualified echo in their heads, they mistake those thoughts as their own.
Can I ask something here?
Go for it, Gabrielle.
Oh, hi, Michael. Because this is really interesting, this actually part. Have you ever asked yourself whether someone else who is giving you advice is qualified? I think from my perspective, I never did. I never. But now actually contemplating on this and then seeing it from that side, does it mean also like when we are asking other people for advice, that we stop trusting ourselves?
No, I would say that one of the first things you want to have is trust of yourself when you do start asking other people for advice, so that you know that you have the intelligence and the capability to go somewhere where there is the kind of support that you need. So I would say, one of the most intelligent things that people can do is understand what they don't know, or at least have some idea of what they don't know and where to go for support for finding that which they don't know personally. There are many fields it would take a lifetime to understand, and clearly, how many hundreds and hundreds of different fields could we go into that ultimately impact our lives? So I think each of us must at some point surrender to support from someone, and having the awareness that I want to know that I can trust this person, or that at least I've got enough verification of their experience in what they're going to share with me, that I can trust it. But I'd say no, a number one issue would be to trust yourself. But trusting yourself doesn't mean you have to know everything. That would be my take.
No, Michael, this was well said. Exactly. Oh, wow. That gave me actually another perspective of you. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Delighted.
It's quite interesting because when I was creating this, the slide for these, I've got a friend, and I just because I was typing up this question, they always constantly give me advice on money. And then I asked myself this question, what qualifies them? And then it got me thinking, because they are in a huge level of debt. I thought, why would I even consider taking advice off this person? And it's only because
Right.
they talk so clear and are sure of themselves, but they're in the worst case scenario of what I wouldn't want to put myself in. And so it was like, it really got me thinking, not just about looking for spiritual teachers, as in our friends, the people we communicate with and ask for advice. Are they even qualified to give us the advice?
That's certainly wisdom to look into it.
And one of the things that I noticed in myself is that it had a bit of fear of I was being judgmental, but it was like, but then that prevents me from discerning what does qualify.
Yeah, discernment's very important, and it's certainly a different thing than judgment.
That is actually true. Yeah.
What's the third cause?
Yes. What's the first cause you have in your mind when you spoke of reasons for distortion, Michael? The third possibilities I see is that the teachings were purposely falsified to mislead and control people. Would people really do that?
Well, just take a look at politics. I rest my case. Yes, unfortunately.
There is so much conflict, confusion, and infighting among spiritual groups. Each of us has to take responsibility for our own process, clean up our own mind, and choose our teachers wisely.
Very important point.
Yeah, it is.
Discernment is key.
Yes. So as a young man, I dumped all my involvement with anything that smacked of spiritual content as a result of my religious upbringing. I also fell into thinking things would make me happy. Now I'm seeing that no matter how much I have, I don't work out what is in my own head. If I don't work out what's in my own head, possessions alone won't satisfy me or bring me peace, happiness, or security, said Richard.
There's an inner work to be done, for sure.
So what have you dumped as a result of your religious upbringing?
Have you pushed anything aside that could potentially be very beneficial if you were to engage it? I know one of the things I dance around a lot, I talk in a lot of circles, or have over the decades with this work, of people who are just like, I've thrown that whole realm away because I can't see it, therefore it must not be true. Well, you can't see radio waves, but they're true. And when you start to understand the impact that every level of energy has in your mind and in your life, it becomes pretty important to clean up the messes that generations have made and never addressed.
So I know personally for me, I completely dumped anything in relation to God, because it was literally beating so much into me that it was like, right, that's it. And I literally, anything that, and even when people spoke and said the name, it was like a switch went off, like not even listening. This big wall went up. And it waited until I started looking into other interpretations that my mind started, oh, what if what I've been taught isn't quite the truth?
Right.
And then I started looking into perception, people's perceptions, and that really helped open my mind up. Maybe it was just someone else's perception.
It's an important piece of work to do.
I think, Inka, what you're saying is right, exactly, because I wasn't the same. I was like, to be honest, confused with this. But then having this chance to learn a different way of seeing the spirituality, and is exactly suiting me, exactly for me, I love that. But as a child, or let's say, I didn't have this choice. I was directed by the family or by the surroundings. But now, as an adult, I have the choice.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, makes a big difference. For sure.
And I think for me, religion was like, you must believe this. And if you question it, you get into trouble, rather than allowing someone to question it and explore it for themselves.
And also, it's prevented you from being yourself, because there were a lot of like sins or anything like that. And then you had to stop yourself and just to not do the wrong one, instead of like, there is no wrong or right, but seeing it from a bigger perspective, learn from it, learn from things. And
Well, there are certainly things that can damage us, and engaging in those things could be put into the category of what's called wrong. So just throwing out the idea that there's no such thing as wrong. You know, if my life is about life and I step out in the middle of the freeway, somebody might say that's kind of a wrong action to do in terms of supporting your life. So understanding that there are influences that are positive and beneficial for our mental, our emotional, our physical, our financial, our relationship development, and there are energies that are off the mark for that. You know, we talked about that in our session on sin. In Aramaic, the word sin being an archery term that simply means off the mark. And so any endeavor that I go in where the energies I engage in are off the mark, it would be reasonable to categorize that as wrong, or actually easier for the mind to deal with is to categorize it as not right. And that allows us to put things in a place where we more and more we engage in what supports us moving forward in any given arena, rather than thinking we can engage in anything and it doesn't make any difference, because it makes a difference.
thank you.
Those things can be nice to have, they can bring comfort, but comfort does not heal. Only with tools designed to complete the task can we heal our pain. It seems like seeking out tools is the sensible thing to do. Spirituality has always been a place where healing tools are found. Religious movement based on spiritual experiences sometimes carry through with that purpose and sometimes go in the opposite direction, attempt to control people by inflicting pain rather than healing it. Where you go for spiritual advice is important. It's interesting to note that people who take the advice of only the best lawyers who travel the world in search of the top physicians who want only the soundest and financial advisors will accept the opinions of those with little or no experience when it comes to spiritual matters. Does that make sense when making decisions that could have long-term consequences?
And there will be people who have very, very highly tuned intellects that will appear to be experts until you can just forget about this arena or that arena or that arena. And if we look from a science point of view, the fact is we know something about 5% of what the universe consists of. The other 95% is unknown. So when you get some kind of an authority coming along telling you to throw something away, think twice as to whether or not throwing something out because a seeming expert says so is really sensible. And a good saying that I've heard in the past, I don't remember who it was that sourced it, was that only an open mind can contain the secrets of the universe. And of course, it doesn't mean be gullible, doesn't mean get sucked into anything, but have a mind that's open and can at least investigate every possible energy that could influence us, and then understand what those influences are and how to change those influences if you deem that appropriate.
Where can I go to learn how to make such decisions, Michael? So it helps to build some brain cells about the way spiritual teachings are used in our culture. You will find that will clarify the process of choosing. So there's two spiritual teachers. One, true spiritual teachers use spiritual teachings to liberate people from their pain and the habits which produce pain and suffering. These styles of teachings come from those who inspire and motivate others by example. They have spiritual experiences and are accomplished in that realm. The fruit or the result of these teachers' work is a shift from the insanity, hatred, and that I like to call little violence of the world to peace, harmony, and abundance. These teachers, while not perfect, focus on their own work. Their hand is always out, compassionately extended for the purpose of supporting anyone who is healing.
So that's one form of spiritual teacher. And then there's a second.
So the false teachers use spiritual teaching deviously under the disguise of a promise to save or liberate people from present or future pain and suffering. They use threat and fear tactics to drive people deeper into their trauma. Often suffering is promoted as good and necessary, and promise of liberation applies to some sort of an afterlife, which cannot be proven nor disproven. These teachers also have a handout, but it is gathering for themselves or their organizations and using some form of threat or fear tactic to keep people in tow. The false teacher uses religion to acquire political, financial, and/or behavior to control over people. The incentive for the weak or insecure to enter this type of religious order and join the rank of false teachers is evident. a disproportionate percentage of the access, power, sexual favors, and money of the people they control and manage occurs to them. Now, I'm just going to ask a question because this is the bit I struggle, in some way struggle with, because then some false teachers say you've got to experience all the pain that they're experiencing is because you've got to keep going, you've got to keep paying me the money and you've got to keep going. But then there's those, obviously when you do the worksheets and stuff, pain does come up. So how do you discern from knowing it's the pain that's coming up to be healed, or it's from a false teacher that is just kind of keeping you stuck in your pain?
For me, one of the questions you ask yourself is, who's getting the benefits here? Are the benefits accruing to me, or are they accruing to the teacher? Are you experiencing more liberation? Are you experiencing a more pleasant life, a healthier relationships, healthier financial conditions? If you are, then you're moving in the right direction. If you've got somebody standing there saying, hey, you're doing better financially, good, give me more, then you know that you're off track with that teacher. That would be my take. And there are spiritual teachers who think suffering is the path. I mean, literally, we have records of people that would make cat of nine tails and they'd whip themselves in order to be holy. It's like, hello? Suffering is not a necessary part of spiritual growth. Unless there's suffering in you, and then you're going to have to face your suffering and move through it. As opposed to some people will tell you to worship the suffering and wallow in the suffering. No, once it's there, forgive it, put it aside, and move on.
You say that again. So, can you say that a bit again?
So there are some who will insist you go into suffering just for the sake of suffering. What I'm offering is the only reason you will ever suffer, if someone isn't inflicting it on you or saying, yeah, come on now, jump in here, get the cat of nine tails out and beat yourself. If there is suffering in you, if there's pain in you, yes, obviously you're going to have to face it to clear it out. But if somebody's counseling you to bring the suffering in order to become holy, then I think you're in the wrong place. I've got a house and, I bought a new house and somebody lived in the house and, the carpet was there and it's all furnished. And I start looking and under the carpet, there's dirt and there are bugs and, there are rats in the walls. And, oh, man, I'm going to have to clean that out. I'm going to have to face what's in there. I'm going to have to deal with it. But if the real estate agent says, and we got several more boxes of rats to bring in the house for you, there's where you want to start turning tail and running.
Michael, can I have a question concerning?
Please, Corey, go ahead.
And pain means negative emotions always?
My offering, if we go to the opening words, we've shared this several times in the last year or so. The opening words in the book of John in Aramaic do not say what the Greeks said. They said that in the beginning was the Word and the Word became flesh. What it says in Aramaic is in the beginning was the mind energy and the mind energy became flesh. What the cell biologists are showing us today is that when you think a thought, that thought becomes a molecule, a literal molecule called a neuropeptide in your structure. And that thought circulates around in your structure until it finds a cell with a receptor site that matches. When it finds a receptor site that matches, it locks onto that receptor site and inserts itself in the cell. If that mind energy is of a destructive nature, then when it hits that receptor site, the result is pain. The cell is saying, no, we don't want this in here. Pay attention to that. Learn to forgive it. If you've got generations and generations and generations who've just accepted, well, pain's just part of life, that's what you have to deal with, then you're going to have to go in and clean that out of your own structure. And that's, no matter how you cut it, that's just not a fun process. But you're not doing it for the sake of suffering. You're doing it for the sake of healing, and you're facing what's in there. Does that get to your question, Corey?
Yeah. And that pain is what you said is the pain is then the energy which is
It's a result of bringing an energy into your structure that doesn't belong there.
Mhm.
That's how I would define pain.
Yeah, but that is always then in the body, right?
No, it can be in the psyche, it can be in the mind.
So in the mind, like a thought, and in
Yeah, you look at people who torture themselves with thinking about, how bad they are, what's wrong with them, living out their power person messages of you're broken, there's something wrong with you.
Mhm.
And the kind of pain that they live in as a result of that. That would be the sort of thing that we would say, okay, as instantly as you notice something like that in you, you've got a worksheet, you've got a device, a tool with which to remove that. Get about removing it and get on the other side of it.
Mhm.
Would be the objective.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Got a question. Is suffering a mental process and pain a physical process?
I think either one can be either. I think we can have both pain and suffering. And most suffering is a result of wanting something that you experience you don't have or you can't have. And that will oftentimes turn into physical pain. But I don't think it's limited to one or the other.
Can I come to this? Because can you expand on this, Michael? Because this is interesting. So this suffer, what's the difference between the suffer and the pain?
Well, someone can be in pain and go, oh, I have pain. Okay, well, I'm going to carry on. Or someone can go, oh, I have pain. And their lives become about their pain. As opposed to, oh, I have some pain. I think I'll look into why I have that pain and how I can be empowered to do something about it, to free myself from it. And then if people don't have any idea that it's possible to make change, I think that's another source of suffering.
Can you repeat that again, please? The last bit, if people...
I'm not sure I can repeat it. It was so long ago.
Okay.
When I realized, to me, the key point, one of the traps that the mind can set for us is, well, how about if I figure this out? And that is the number one trap of the mind, as opposed to, what have I got here? What tools do I have to do something about it? And if people don't know that there are tools with which they can do something about their pain, then I think that leads to suffering. Whereas if you recognize, oh, there's something I can do about this, and you go about doing it, and you eradicate the pain and without having to go through the suffering. Another way to say it, and again, I don't remember who it was that said this, was pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. If I'm in some sort of painful experience, physical, mental, emotional, relational, financial, and I choose to shift my mind into a place where, okay, I've got work to do and I'm going to do it, I'm not going to hang around and suffer. If I sit in, it's hopeless, I'm helpless, there's nothing I can do, then I'm going to tend to exacerbate suffering.
So
actually, the new book that I'm working on is called The End of Suffering. And that's what forgiveness does, is it takes us through to the other side of suffering.
But is it also mean, to let me interpret it to my understanding, that suffering is basically something where you have experienced the pain depending on your life, but you are not finding the tools to do something about it, or you don't know how to resolve it or how to operate and come out from it. And you
I
stay
think
at
that
the,
would be what leads people into creating suffering on top of their pain. Does that make sense?
somehow.
Yeah.
Michael, just a short question about the trap, what you said before. I think I often go the trap like to find it out. Like I now have found a thing like for the financial situation, that I carry a burden and something like that, a debt for my, and I thought then came the idea for my family. And thinking that, there came then that is it then the trap to think, so I have to find it out if that is really from the grandmother or wherever it is that the trap to want to find it
Yeah.
out if it is real, or to go in a different direction?
Well, my take is what I hear you saying is falling into the old trap, and we've talked about this before, is if I could just figure this out.
Yeah, right.
You can't figure it out. You can always forgive it, but figuring it out, the number of energetic influences that come together in situations that reflect pain to us, figuring them out is a waste of time.
Yeah.
Take the worksheet and forgive us to that pain and alleviate yourself of it.
Mm. And my mind was like that, saying you have to figure it out if it's right
Yeah.
or not right. And then and in that moment is then my mind be somehow confused, or what is then going on? I mean, now
Well,
I know, I remember, but in that moment I thought, oh yeah, I have to find, I yeah, I
so
thought,
once again, my offering is you're never going to figure it out.
yeah,
That is a pseudo solution. The mind says, I've got the solution. All we have to do is figure this out. If I walk into a workshop room with, let's say I've got 200 people in a room, and I would say, okay, everybody, tell me what your age is. And I wrote down everybody's age. I added all those numbers together, and then I subtracted the 5 years from each one of them. I would have the number of years the people in that room have been trying to figure it out.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like, it's like a rocking chair. It does give you something to do, but you won't go anywhere on it.
Yeah.
Rather than sitting around trying, well, if only, I wonder how, I wonder why. Well, yeah. Pick up the worksheet, forgive us to whatever that is, and the energy will just start to dissipate and disappear.
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out, the mind will play the game of, it'll make it into 1,000 different demons, and you'll be chasing 1,000 different demons, or you'll focus on one area where forgiveness is needed, and all those demons will collapse. That's what the worksheet's about.
And I make then the worksheet about the family, or about
whatever you're paying attention to in your life that you have a goal for, that object of attention isn't fulfilling. There's where you start with the worksheet process. There's the key way into forgiveness.
Yeah.
What is this situation that I have going on? And if I were to be able to write a set of instructions for what I want it to do, that's the goal. Work with canceling that goal, because it's that goal that's driving your mind to keep that whole thing tumbling around and unresolved. Cancel the goal, collapse what the mind is doing, and step into healing.
Oh, yeah. I understood. Thank you.
Good, cool.
I have
Should we
a
go
quick
back?
question.
Oh, go ahead.
Hello. I have a really quick question. So when you're talking about like pain and suffering, is this like physical as well as emotional and mental?
Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, relationship. It can be in any arena. And the forgiveness process can be used to directly impact the energy behind whatever form the suffering is taking and free you of it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
have you done the workshop where we talk about why is this
haven't.
happening to me again?
No,
No?
I haven't, because I'm always on
Okay.
I'm always in transit, so I catch these. I get in a little bit late, and now I don't have had a chance to like print out the worksheet, but I really, really, really want to do it.
Okay, well, there's a link. I think Ian has already put it in the notes, or it'll be in the email that's sent to you. And you can go and sit down and watch that workshop. Here's how it works. There are several videos that we've done so far with the support group where we've walked people through the forgiveness process. So there are lots of instructions there. You can go to your app store on your app phone, pardon me, the app store on your phone, and type in Heartland, one word, HEARTLAND, Aramaic forgiveness, and download the app, and you can do the worksheet right there on the phone. So there are lots of instruction sets, and our radio show is always there. You can ask questions, and we're here to support you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cool. Delighted, Annie.
And just to share as well that you don't have to go digging into your past to do these worksheets.
Oh.
Life has a beautiful way of just in the little everyday things that happen in your life that you can just go and do a worksheet on, and then you realize that was from 20 years ago, So it's not that you have to go digging into the 20 years. Life will bring it forward for you. It's that's what I've discovered from doing the worksheets.
Yeah, what we suggest people do is recognize who you are as love and make a commitment to live as the presence of love, and put one foot in front of the other and live your life. If something shows up that brings something less than love up in you, then do the worksheet. It will clear out whatever that's about. Step forward. You don't have to do, get on the psychiatrist's couch for the next 25 years and find that deep, dark, dirty thing that happened in the past. Just commit to live as love, and everything that comes up in you that takes you out of that is your forgiveness work, and that will move your life forward. We have a gentleman, actually, he was on the show last week, on our radio show. He started doing this work a little better than 20 years ago. He had shared with us when he actually came to our teaching center, and he spent 2 years on the support team working at the center, doing a work exchange program and doing his work. He shared that his father spent most of his when he was a kid, his father spent most of his life in prison. And when he came home, he only came home to get drunk and beat him and his mother up. That was basically his childhood. He followed the family pattern, became an alcoholic, went to prison a couple of times, and became in touch with this work. And actually, his first still point breathing session opened just a cosmic type experience for him and just turned his life around. And he had spent 2 years at Heartland. This was after about, I guess at that point, he'd been doing the work for 10 or 12 years. He was full-time at our teaching center for 2 years. And we were on the road doing the radio show, and he called into the show. He completed his 2 years, and he left, and he was driving back home. And it was a 2-day drive, so he'd stayed in a hotel, and the radio show was at noon. We were actually in Central Time at that point. And he called the show, and he said he had just gotten on the road, and for the first time in his life, and this guy was in his late 40s, early 50s. He said, for the first time in my life, I woke up in that hotel room this morning and my body was filled with the presence of love. It's the first time in my life that I have gotten up and not been in terror and looking for what was going to get me. If you listen to today's show, the archives, of today's radio show, he was on for about the last 10 minutes of the show. And you'll get a sense of where a man who literally, his words were, Dad got out of prison long enough to get drunk and beat my mother and I up, and then he disappeared. And he'd be back and he'd beat my mother and I up. That was his childhood. Listen to the last 10 or 15 minutes of the radio show today. And you'll see where doing the work takes you. I mean, from hopeless, helpless pity party into an excitement about life that's what we're all designed to have, would be my offering. So Yinka, we maybe have lost the thread of what this is. Maybe we just go back one and do the last line or two, just so we pick up that thread.
Yeah. So this is about the false teacher. So the incentive for the weak or insecure to enter this type of religious order and join the ranks of false teachers is evident. A disproportionate percentage of the access, power, sexual favors and money of the people they control and manage occurs to them. And this is where Richard says, sounds like pretty heavy condemnation, Michael. I thought this work was supposed to be positive in its thinking. I don't know if I want to hear this. I felt like that many times, Michael. So this work is not about being a positive thinker that can get you into a lot of trouble. The work is about honest and appropriate thinking. There is a disorder that's called premature positive thinking. If you have a negative foundation and refuse to deal with it, positive thinking is very appealing. It becomes another way to avoid. There is benefits to positive thinking. Life improves. The problem is that the premature positive thinking has to be on top of things all the time. The stress of keeping the negative down with positive attitudes means there is never a minute to rest. Premature positive thinking can lead to becoming like the type A personality. It can all result in overload, and if you let up the positive thinking for even one moment, things start to crash. The benefits disappear and you get to start over. It's a difficult way to live.
So what's the replacement for that?
So what's the replacement?
Next, there it is.
So premature positive thinking also produces disease. Appropriate and honest thinking is the goal. The only healing and truly restorative process are those which allow stored negativity to be surfaced, exposed to love, and released.
So the replacement is you do your work. It's not pretending everything is rosy when it's not. You know, we all came into this game with some kind of family system and a load that was passed on to us. If you're the early adopter and you say, well, okay, I can see that this is how my family system worked, or this is how my culture worked, I don't have to live there. A guy who spent years pouring alcohol down his throat in order not to feel the pain of that father when he would come home, and watching his mother be physically abused. Choosing to go in, feel that pain, apply forgiveness, and work through that pain leads to removal of those energies that keep those cycles going. And that is done through forgiveness and allowing the underlying hidden dynamics that nobody wants to face, allowing them to come forward and enter into the practice of bringing them forward in the presence of love. When those two things meet, when love is conscious, active, and present in you, and that which is painful surfaces in you, when those two things meet, the pain starts to dissolve. That's all. And the most direct way that I've found in 50 years of developing this work to consistently, persistently remove those painful experiences is that forgiveness worksheet process. But of course, you've got to do it. I used an example on the show today. Actually, the reason that the gentleman called in that I was speaking about is he's a contractor. And we were talking about the necessity of consistently doing your work. And I used the example of, so let's imagine that you've got the set of plans for this big, beautiful house that you want to live in. And there are 10,000 nails that are going to need to be driven into the walls, into the boards, in order to build that house. And you say, well, I want to live in that house, but I don't want to drive all those nails. Good luck ever living in that house. People say, well, yeah, I want to be free of my pain, but I don't want to have to do the work of cleaning that up. Well, if you don't want to do the work, then don't do the work. And you'll get to keep doing the same things you've always done. When you choose to face it and move through it, then everything changes.
So let go of the need to build a positive framework on top of a negative foundation. Acquire tools and deal with the negative as you develop the capacity to naturally and gracefully live from the positive. In this system, there is no stress from trying to keep falsehood in place. There is no pretentious thinking because everything less than the positive is given space to surface and heal. In the short term, it is extra work and commitment to do what I am suggesting, but in the long term, it leads to a much easier life. Sorry, in the long run, it leads to a much easier life. And with these tools, the body, rid of its burdens, can then use its own recuperative powers to rebuild. Dis-ease is not natural. Health is our natural state and is always possible with interference, where interference is removed.
Great graphic.
Sounds like pretty heavy condemnation, Michael. I thought this work was supposed to be positive and it's thinking, I don't know if I want to hear this. With awareness of what is driving us and tools with which to heal, we can free ourselves from these patterned responses. It is important to be discriminating about what you serve with your intelligence, resources, and time. Right livelihood means you do nothing that supports disintegrative energy in the world, and use your time, intelligence, money, and energy to support only awareness and aliveness. The need to condemn negative behavior or those practicing it can also be healed. A willingness to investigate is required. Knowledge is power. Ignorance does not lead to healing. It leads to staying stuck behind the prison's fences, suffering and pretending there is no way out. Classic victimhood. We have all to some degree been trained in fear of the world. Each of us, to some extent, has been seduced by and engaged in manipulative behavior. Perhaps that is why most people would rather not admit, talk about, or acknowledge the fact that they intimidate others. They do not face themselves as you are now. I acknowledge each of your courage and your willingness to hear new information. That can be an especially difficult task when it involves looking at our own errors or the errors of the people we love. It can be even more difficult when we start to let go of the part of us that need to be released and healed. It was interesting when I was creating this one, I was thinking that I've never heard anyone have a conversation that said, I've intimidated someone, but often hear a conversation where they intimidated me. And it was just
Yes.
interesting to when I was creating this, like, yeah, well, listening to the conversations that even I have had, it's always about they
Right.
rather than.
And what Richard's doing here, if you remember, as a kid, he went through all kinds of intimidation. And he turned it around. But here's what happens with a power person dynamic. And Richard's waking up to this in this example. When a power person does a behavior to us, we classify it as bad, intimidating, whatever it is. However, we experience that this power person, being our God, so to speak, overcame and won over us by doing this behavior. So we'll tend to turn around, and when we're under stress, we'll do the very behavior that our power person did to us that we hated the most, except we won't call it, if we called it intimidation from them, we won't call it intimidation, we'll call it taking care of ourselves. And so what Richard is recognizing here is, oh, the modality he took on, which, you know, if you go back to the story of him in the restaurant with the coffee cup, what does he do? He's intimidating. But in his mind, he didn't label that power person behavior as intimidation when he did it. He just labeled it taking care of himself. So this is what starts to happen when people wake up. Oh, that's what I've done.
And a key thought, it requires courage to look at ourselves. Having tools make looking easier and more productive.
Big time.
And being willing to do it and use those tools. There's no point in having the tool if it's sat in the drawer.
Exactly. Yes.
So, is
Yes.
question?
Yeah, that would be the power. I'm just answering to Gina. That would be the power person dynamic. Remember, when a situation occurs where, and it's usually a parent and a child, the parent, being the power person, has all the power in the situation, is not functioning as a human being, is not functioning out of love, and the child perceives it as survival. When those three circumstances come together, the child as an energy system, their energy field just opens wide, and they become like a sponge and just suck in all of the energy in the environment. Once that happens to a person, for the rest of their lives, until they go in and forgive that dynamic in their minds, that's what will control them. And they'll only be able to do three behaviors literally in their whole lives. So it'll be three basic behaviors. And the basic behavior that will control them will be dependent upon how much stress they're under. Once a power person dynamic is instilled in someone's mind, when there's little or no stress, they'll do whatever they did to get along with their power person. When stress starts to build, they'll do whatever they did to resist and survive with their power person. And when they become ultra stressed, they'll do what their power person did to them that they hated the most. Runs the world. Once you apply forgiveness, you can start to drop into those parts of your mind that have accepted those energy dynamics, and you can start to forgive, start to remove those dynamics. Not let your power person off the hook for what they did. Now, maybe some of the stuff your power person did was horrific. So you might choose to pardon them for what they did. But if you call pardoning them for what they did forgiveness, then you'll never go inside and change that dynamic in your own mind. The objective of this work is to support people finding the empowerment within to change those dynamics within their own minds.
That's the last slide of there. So the best exercise I know that to practice to strengthen the ability to hold a space of love is to just close your eyes and allow yourself to become quiet with your awareness focused inside. Think of that which inspires in you the clearest, strongest, most powerful love you are capable of feeling.
Yay. And I saw the comment about we need to do this for politicians. I do kind of choose to keep my head attached, so I'm probably going to wait until we hit critical mass. That's exactly what they do, Gina, yes. And it's safe to feel that pain. It's safe to breathe and let it move through you. Remember that opening slide? When you hold your breath, that's how you acquire a past about something. When you allow that pain to come forward and you breathe and you purposely, consciously connect to the active presence of love, that's what creates the dissolution of the pain.
I don't know if anybody wants to ask any questions, because the next chapter will be transitions on the 22nd of February.
Yes. So does that all make sense for everybody? Questions, thoughts, answers, ideas? Well, then, again, you're welcome to join us for the radio show from 1 till 2 o'clock Eastern Time. You can do that by going to our website, whyagain.org, and you'll see a microphone on the page. Drill down on the microphone, and that will tell you how to connect with the show through your computer, or you can download the app Podbeam and look for Mind Shifters Radio, and that will take you into our radio show through Podbeam. The app can be downloaded from your app store. Just type Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And you can also ask questions from within the app, and we will get answers to you. So thank you all for joining us. Have an awesome evening.
I have a question.
Go for it.
But when often make the Heartland app worksheet, and when it is not about a person, but about a situation.
Right.
For me, like the money flow. And then there is somewhere, I don't know, I made it once, and there was somewhere a stoppage where I could not find out that it was like, it is not personal, and that it was so, yeah, what is it that was so like, how can I get it? How can I catch that thing more deeper?
Well, here's what I found, is that oftentimes we'll go into avoidance when doing the worksheet. And let me use an example. It's like, oftentimes there'll be a flip of issues when they start the worksheet. So let's say I'm interacting with someone, and let's say it's my boss, and my boss isn't treating me very well. And so I'm doing a worksheet on the boss and not being treated very well. And then when I go to the goal, I go, well, I just want to have a happy life. So I just stopped doing the worksheet on the boss, and I avoided that altogether, which means there's probably some pain in me that I'm avoiding. And I went over to and I had a goal about life. Now, if I was doing a worksheet on life, that would be perfect as a goal. But when you switch issues, and so what I suggest you do is stay with it and look at all of the different scenarios. You know, it can be good to sit down with a pen and paper and write out, in this situation, my financial situation, what is it I'm really looking for? So I might say, well, I'm looking for more money. And I do that worksheet 2, 3, 4, 5 times. It just doesn't seem to get me anywhere.
Yeah.
And then I look at, oh, I want more money so that I can have a stress-free life. Bingo, there's the goal you want to be canceling. So it can be useful to start looking at all different aspects. And if my mind's avoiding by switching issues, by not really going to the real goal. So if you've got a thing you're working with in money, I'd suggest looking at maybe doing the goal as I want to have comfort in my life. I want to have ease.
Hmm.
And you may find by looking around the edges of that issue that you'll get to the core of it. And when you do, bingo, that painful construct of your mind is going to collapse. That's when you'll be done with it.
Yeah, that's the effort. But the first question is then in that Heartland app, who has done it to you? And then
Well, the idea there is to look at what's the object of your attention. What am I paying attention to? So it might be, if the issues around me not, quote unquote, not having what I consider to be enough money, then that might be about, the object of the situation might be my boss. If it's about not having enough money, the object might be my bills. So there can be several different aspects to an issue like that.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Awesome. Delighted. Gina? How are you, young lady? We haven't heard your voice in a while. You gonna hit your camera and show us your sweet face?
I'd rather not, but
Okay.
can you hear me okay? Because
You're loud and clear.
Oh, lovely.
Go for it.
Yeah, I read somewhere then, and I think it pertains to what you've been saying, that once you become aware of something like a fault or an issue or whatever, then you can clear it. But I also think I read that you kind of have cleared it once you become aware of it. And the second thing,
I wouldn't agree with that at all.
oh, right. Okay. Well, I'll let you answer that in a minute. And the second thing is, could you do more worksheets with us, please? Because when you did the worksheets before, that kind of gave me a momentum, which
Right.
has slipped. So if you could do some more worksheets.
Were you with
that
us on the show 2 weeks ago?
I was.
Oh, good. Okay. So then what I would suggest, because we're doing a balance here. If you go to our website, whyagain.org, and in the upper left-hand corner, there's a button that says Start Here. There are at least...
Every time I open my mouth, every time, you're like a broken record. Maybe I am as well.
Yeah, there you go. So
but why don't you
there are at
agree
least...
with the being aware part then? Once you become aware, you've kind of clearing it. Why don't you agree with that?
So if I open my bank statement and my bank statement says I'm overdrawn by $5,000, I'm aware of it. Does that put any more money in my bank account? No, I'm going to have to take some action. So awareness is a starting point. It's a step in the process, but it is certainly not the end of the process. But in the meantime, if you go to the microphone, or pardon me, go to the button in the upper left-hand corner that says Start Here, there's a special section of radio shows. We've got at least 20 different radio shows where we've walked somebody through the whole worksheet process from start to finish. So there are at least 20 different shows. You're asking for inspiration from people doing worksheets. There are at least 20 of them on the website that you can listen to free. So look for those special shows, and and each one, there's a different, people have different issues, different ways of approaching it. So there's a slightly different piece of learning in each of those worksheets. I'd suggest that you start off by listening to all 20 of those worksheet sessions.
So
and that will really...
When you become aware, then it means you have to take action. So I guess...
Well, it doesn't mean you have to. Doesn't mean you
No.
have to. If somebody's overloaded with stress and doesn't know how to reduce their stress, and they become aware of some horrible thing in their lives, a lot of people just lay down and give up, go into depression and give up.
I'm not one of them people.
Good. Awesome.
So once you become aware, then one of the action steps I can take is to do some worksheets around it. And
That's it. Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
And also all the worksheets that we have done with Michael on these sessions are all recorded and also put on mine and Michael's YouTube. So you can rewatch those as well.
Yep. And if there are specific, you know, I don't know if you've got a smartphone, but download the app. And if you have questions, let's say you're doing step 2 and you go, I don't understand this. There's a button on that page. Click that button and you write, gee, I'm on step 2 and I just don't understand what that means. I think it means this, but can you clarify that for me? You hit the button. Jeannie will get that message from you. She'll read it to me on the radio show the next day. I'll answer it, and then she'll send you back a link and say, here's exactly where we answered your question. So you're welcome to do that too. Excuse me.
How many different types of worksheets have you got? I mean, I'm
Many.
stuck. I'm stuck, if you like, on the very simple one that we did at the beginning. I'm not really stuck, but I understand that one and I like that one.
Well, then use it. Put it to work.
I find the other ones, the one you did 2 weeks ago, really complicated. So yeah, simple for me is better.
Yeah. Stay with what you're finding that you understand. And the feedback I've gotten from people, and the reason we leave all of the worksheets, I mean, literally, the worksheet that we presented last week is probably at least version 4013. That's how many different developmental stages the worksheet has gone through. We have many of them on our website. And what people have told me is that they'll work with one worksheet for a while, and then their mind gets kind of used to it, and they'll switch to another worksheet. It'll open a new, fresh place. And sometimes it requires, people will hit a plateau, and it's like they'll use the tool and they'll raise. Boy, this is great. And then they get to a really major issue, and it's going to take time for them to work through that. And it seems like they're on a plateau and they're not going to get anywhere. Just keep doing it, and then bingo, the breakthrough will happen. And again, from the app, ask questions. We'll answer them any and every day of the week.
Even the simple worksheet I found very powerful, and the changes that take place.
It works.
Wow.
It works. Corey?
Thank you.
You're welcome, young lady. Corey?
No. I found out that it's not about money. That is okay. But there is something that I hold it back, that I do not want to spend it. Is that the thing I need to work on?
It sounds like what I hear there is some worksheets on poverty would probably be useful.
Mm-hmm.
Where poverty is the object of attention. That will probably open the space for you to get through that one.
Oh, okay. Even if that is not the situation, but that is a fear.
That's called a situation of poverty. If I have a fear about spending money, I'm in poverty. And if I forgive as to my poverty, I'll get free, and I'll be able to understand where my money is and spend when I know I can and reserve when I know I can. There won't be a big deal.
Oh, okay. So the money is okay with me, but it's about the poverty thinking.
Yeah, that's fear and that's poverty, and that would be what you want to be forgiving.
Okay.
You want to be removing from your mind.
Okay.
Okay, cool. All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
excuse me, go ahead, Yinka.
Yeah, so what I found is not until you start doing the worksheets by yourself, you then discover what is actually really behind. Because often I've discovered for myself, it's not what I thought it was. But it's doing the worksheets that help me see what the pinpoint exactly what it was. And we want the answer straight away. Michael, just tell me what the answer is. Just
Yes.
tell me what that pinpoint is, so we don't have to do the work. You need to do
Yes.
the work to see it in yourself.
Yeah. It's a process.
Mhm.
And each person has to go through their own process for themselves. I can only support somebody and give you information and support in doing it, but you've got to do the work. You know, if you want to live in that house, you're going to take the hammer and the nails and drive the 10,000 nails to build the house. It's just what it takes.
Mhm.
So thank you all for joining us, and have a blessed one.
Yeah.
We are thinking about, actually, someone was asking us the other day if we would do a Laws of Living intensive. And so I'm thinking about doing that. And if we did it, it would be a 20-week Zoom intensive. So if anybody's interested in doing that, drop Jeannie a note, JEANIE at whyagain.org. And if we have enough people to respond to that, we'll schedule a Laws of Living intensive. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us.
If you send
Have a
me
blessed
some
one.
information, Michael, and I'll put it in the groups as well.
Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, awesome.
All right,
Thanks.
blessings. Good night,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Big love. Thank you.
You.